What's up? What's up? Hayden Schaap here, doing my study of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and really getting into some good stuff now that we just finished up Habit 1. I'm going to do a quick summary of Habit 1 and then go into Habit 2 here. But just as a reminder, if you like the study that I'm doing, follow me on any of the places that you consume content. So Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, or for the podcast and audio, YouTube. Follow me on TikTok. I have a bunch of these little snippets cut out, but I'm mainly doing this study for myself to ingrain the concepts of the books and the ideas that I care about most from my personal development perspective. I'm doing this to really ingrain those within me as I seek to embody more of the 7 habits of highly effective people. And as a result, it's really having a profound impact on my life. So if you want to follow along that journey, then subscribe and like the stuff so that it gets out to more people. And I'd really appreciate that. But if you don't, it doesn't bother me either, because I'm doing this a lot for myself. But if you want to be along for the journey, even as you're doing your own, I think that it's a cool thing. So, all right, we're going to get into Habit 2 today, but I first want to do just a quick recap of Habit 1. Habit 1 is be proactive. So if we go back, some of the things that really were just impactful for me in my study of Habit 1 on be proactive is starting first off with the idea that Habit 1 is the principles of personal vision. And that was interesting for me as I first started studying that, principles of personal vision, because I always just viewed the habit of be proactive, which is what Habit 1 is, as essentially making and keeping commitments, and that was it. Like, that's it. If you want to be a proactive person, learn how to do the things that you say you're going to do. So make and keep commitments. But even just this first line in Habit 1, principles of personal vision, Habit 1, becoming a proactive person, is so much more about not just learning how to make and keep commitments and be reliable in your ability to follow through on those things, but it's also about your ability to proactively, first off, identify the way that you view the world and own the current results of your life. And then secondly, be able to align your decisions with the things that you most care about, the values that you're trying to base your life off of. Habit 2 is going to help us really begin with the end in mind, is really going to help more dive into like what are those principles and how to make sure that the mission that you're building for your life and that you're aligning yourself with your like true identity. It helps you get into the specifics of that. And then Habit 3 is all about the execution. But really what I enjoyed most about my insights from Habit 1 that I almost haven't recognized up to this point, and I've read the book like 30 times or more, is the fact that being proactive means being proactive according to the things that you care about most as a human being, and having the personal vision to be able to choose to align your life through your actions with the things that matter most to you and subordinate your feelings to those things that matter most to you. It's not just about making and keeping commitments. It's about making and keeping the right commitments that align you with true principles, which is why preface to Habit 1 is all about it's about principles and paradigms. What are true principles and what are the paradigms through which we see the world? Then as a proactive human being, as a proactive a creator of your life, which is what we are, right? In the analogy of a programmer, we are the programmer. Habit 2 is let's write the program and make sure that the program is perfect, or at least that it's unchanging and constitutional. And then Habit 3 is executing on that program and making it so that we can accommodate for any of the circumstances and any of the changes that might come along the way. So Habit 1 really, as we are the programmer, is saying, okay, I can actually choose the outcomes here. What does that mean? Well, first off, I have to own the outcomes of my life previous to this. Then I have to realize, like, where am I being a victim? Where am I actually relinquishing my ability to choose in my language, in my thoughts, in my patterns of behavior? Am I compensating for my own inability to, deal with other people and their weaknesses by giving up my ability to change my circumstances through my language, through my attitudes, behaviors, etc. So those are some just kind of basic overview thoughts and insights for me on Habit 1. one of the cruxes of this is between stimulus and response, that we have the power to choose. And this idea that like we can't choose the things that have happened to us. We also actually can't go back and re-choose the choices that we've made, or the circumstances that we've got ourselves in, or that other people have got us in, right? But we can choose our response to those things. So between stimulus and between our response to that stimulus, we have the power to choose, and that is a true and underlying principle of proactivity as a whole. I love Viktor Frankl's story in here as well. And that as we have the freedom to choose, we can use the things like our self-awareness, our imagination, conscience, and our independent will. All of that goes into our ability to make responses that align us with the truth of the fact that we are the creators of our life, and we don't have to be the victims or the creatures of it. So there's another interesting thing here as well, another interesting concept that I really like, and that's about the circle of influence and the circle of concern. And that the way to become a proactive person is to start acting within our circle of influence rather than our circle of concern. To the extent that we do that, then we start to enlarge that circle of influence. But the more you focus on your circle of concern, the things that are out there that you don't have control over, the less control you have over the things that you should or could have control over. And so in that, we have three different types of problems. We have direct control problems, so things that we can directly manage or control that don't involve other people, like me getting up in the morning, when I get up in the morning, me writing out the things that I value most in my life, seeking truth, my own personal study, the things that I eat, what I say. All of those things are within my direct control. Indirect control problems are the second type of problem, that things that are usually the problems of our life fall under, or the things in our life that we can control fall under, are indirect control problems that involve other people. And in order to be a proactive person within indirect control problems, we can employ the tactics of persuasion and influence, and persuade people to our cause, or persuade others and influence others through our speech and through our actions. And then no control problems are things that we have no control over, our circumstances, the weather, things that are outside of our control. To the extent that we can stop trying to complain about the things that are outside of our control and start trying to only influence the things within our speech and our actions and behaviors, the things that we can control, and persuade others within those as well, that's how you become a proactive person. That's how you own the results of your life. Really fascinating. I just loved that study and that idea. You'll have to go back and listen to some of it. I apologize for the bad sound quality on some of it before. I think it's hopefully getting better over time. Okay, and then he finishes with making and keeping commitments. All right, so now we're going to get into habit 2, beginning with the end in mind. And I'm pumped about habit 2 because I feel like one of my strengths as a human being on this earth is the ability to see out there and have a vision for the future. And this is fun for me because I love the fact that, like, as I start to try to become a more proactive person, now I feel like I have more control over my circumstances and the outcomes of my life. One thing that I do want to point out is this last concept from habit 1, which is making and keeping commitments. And why this is so important, making and keeping commitments plays so strongly within our ability to create a vision for our life for the future that is compelling. Why is that a crux of being able to set and achieve meaningful goals that are in line with your purpose? Well, making and keeping commitments is the crux of that, because if you can't keep your word to yourself, it is very difficult to keep your word to other people, and very difficult to have the strength to follow through with your word when it comes to larger and larger tasks or larger and larger goals. It just is not going to happen if you can't keep your word to yourself first and foremost. So yeah, here we go into habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. And I haven't highlighted any of this stuff because I'm not doing any pre-study. I want this to be like an actual documentation of like the things that I'm learning along the way. And this is going to get more and more practical. So like I feel like I tend to philosophize a little bit over some of this stuff, but I think it's going to get more and more practical as I go into just this is directly applying to what I'm doing right now with creating goals for my sales season. And any of my salesmen that are listening or watching to this right now, this directly applies to, first off, you have to make and keep commitments and get better and better at that over time. But while you're getting better and better at that, then you can start actually planning with the end in mind to go dominate not only your sales season but your life. And that is where this gets, the crossover gets to the point where it's like super meaningful and important, and honestly just a lot of fun. All right, so I'm going to turn the sound down a little bit because it might be getting a tiny bit loud. Okay. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. That's an awesome quote. Please find, okay, and then this is now this first part here is, for me, it's the how do you measure your life section of this book, and how do you get to center the things that discover the things that matter most to you, and what the true principles that you want to base all the decisions and actions that you make in your life off of. So he says, please find a place to read these next few pages where you can be alone and uninterrupted. Clear your mind of everything except for what you will read and what I will invite you to do. Don't worry about your schedule, your business, your family, or your friends. Just focus with me and really open your mind. Okay, so let's try to do that here. In your mind's eye, see yourself going to a funeral of a loved one. Okay? Picture yourself driving to the funeral parlor or chapel parking lot, getting out. Unfortunately, I've been to a few funerals in my time already, in my short 20-something years, which is unfortunate. Some death of those close to me and direct family, and then friends as well. And so if you've ever had that experience, it's easy to put yourself in that situation where you like imagine yourself driving to the funeral. The joy of having known. You feel the shared sorrow of losing your loved one, the joy of having known that radiates from the hearts of the people there. And yeah, any funeral you've been to, I'm sure you can attest to that feeling. It's a real thing, right? As you walk down to the front of the room and look inside the casket, you suddenly come face to face, not with someone else, but with yourself. This is your funeral. And every time I do this activity meaningfully, this is always the thing that is most impactful. Anytime I read this book and I actually take time to do this, it's so incredibly impactful for realigning my life with the things that matter most and the things that bring actual true joy and happiness, regardless of what's happening around me, including hardship. So you come face to face with yourself at this funeral. You realize that it's yours. This is your funeral. 3 years from today. All these people have come to honor you, to express feelings of love and appreciation for your life. As you take a seat and wait for the services to begin, you look at the program in your hand. There are to be 4 speakers. The first is from your family, immediate and also extended, children, brothers, sisters, nephews, nieces, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, from all the country to attend. Second speaker is from your friends, someone who can give a sense of what you were as a person. And the third speaker is from your work or profession. The fourth is from your church. There's some community organization. So there's family, friends. Let's see, what does he say? Family, friends. I'm trying to find these and highlight these. Work, and then church and community service. The fourth is from your church or some community organization where you were involved in service, where someone wasn't having to pay you for your time. Now think deeply. What would you like each of these speakers to say about you in your life? Man, this whenever I think about this, it gets me really emotional, because if you can just put your phone down or cut away the noise for a second and like actually cut away the noise except for this for a second and actually like think deeply about this, it can get pretty impactful. What would you like each of these speakers to say about you in your life? What kind of husband, wife, father, or mother would you like their words to reflect? What kind of son or daughter or cousin? What kind of friend? What kind of working associate? What character would you like them to have seen in you? What contributions, what achievements would you like them to remember? Look carefully at the people around you. What differences would you like them to have? What differences would you like to have made in their lives? What contribution, right? Before you read further, take a few moments to jot down your impressions. It will greatly increase your personal understanding of habit 2. I've done this, and one of the things that I've done with this is I've actually tried to, for myself, played a couple of thought experiments on this activity to understand it a little more deeply for myself. One of the things that Jordan Peterson, and I want to actually just share what I do, because I think it's really helpful and impactful. It's funny because whenever I do this activity, oftentimes, like, I'll sit down with one of my sales leaders, for example, or even like I've done this a lot recently with some of like our rookie sales reps that I've like not just tested this on, but actually tried to drive home the points with. And people will come to me and they'll say basically like, hey, Hayden, let's work on my goals. Can we build out my first creation for the summer, which is what we call in our sales org, my first creation. And the first thing that I'll do is actually go and I'm doing this more and more now lately. I used to not do this at first. We would build the sales goals out and then we would circle back to this. But nowadays, more of what I do, the first thing that I've been trying to do with when I do these goal setting sessions is actually start with the eulogy and say like, okay, I want you to achieve your goals for this sales season, but what if you go achieve the goals, but you don't have any understanding of how they might align with your unique purpose and your mission on earth? Then basically that goal, that achievement was wasted because you could have aligned it and you could have had it contribute to your unique purpose and mission. The same goal, but because you didn't have the end in mind, the actual end, what matters most, you'll lose out on the achievement itself in contributing to becoming the best version of you. And so I have them do this thought experiment, which I did this on a previous training. I think you can listen to it. It's on this podcast on setting and achieving goals and how do you measure your life. So this is, I'm following Jordan Peterson's, if you ever do his self-authoring program, basically what Jordan Peterson has you do to find to really see what trajectory your life is headed is he basically just says, okay, imagine nothing's going to change about your behaviors and attitudes. Where does that end up? Where do you end up if nothing changes? Okay. And then once you write that out and you're actually really honest with yourself, then you flip it and you say, okay, now where would I want to end up? So this is what this next experiment and this next thought-provoking experiment does for me. Okay, so this is it, all right? And you could almost do this in a meditation, actually. So first I say, all right, so imagine right now that you died, okay? And you died, you can't take anything back. You're gone. And as you go up to heaven, whether you believe in heaven or not, doesn't matter, just play along with me. As you go up to heaven, there's an angel that greets you there. So you think you're going to be greeted by God first, but in fact it's an angel. And that angel who's greeting you basically takes you by the hand and says, hey, how you doing? Checks in on you and then says, okay, hey, pearly gates are behind me, but before we go in, there's this kind of this routine we have to do with everyone before they go through. And there's not going to be a test or anything, but you have to do this ritual with us before you go through. And you're wondering like, what's going on? I thought I was just going to go up to heaven. This is not what I was expecting, right? Or maybe you thought you were going to go somewhere else. But at any rate, the angel says, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go watch your funeral, actually. So they haven't had the services yet, but in order for you to pass on to the pearly gates, through the pearly gates, you have to watch your funeral. And so what the angel does is he takes you and he puts you in this room. There's a big screen in front of you. And with the angel alongside you, you have to watch the funeral. You have to watch your own funeral, okay? So you know it's yours. And as you're at the funeral, you realize you're watching, right? And it's kind of taking a minute to start. And you're wondering, like, why isn't the services starting yet? And you look at the outline of the services, and basically it says that you're going to have, like Covey says, somebody from your family is going to get up and talk. You're going to have a couple people from your family. So your mom, your dad, your brothers are going to get up and talk. I'm the oldest of 5 boys, so my brothers or sisters will get up and talk. And any really close family to you, like family that's really meaningful to you if you were to sit down and think about it, your grandparents, maybe a couple aunts and uncles if they were close to you. You're going to have somebody there from your career get up and speak, and you'll have people that you worked for and people that you worked with. So like a boss is there that's going to attest to how you were in your work up to this point in your life. Then you're going to have someone that you worked for you, so someone you directly managed. They're going to attest about who you were as a manager. And then you're going to have somebody, your friend, a couple of friends who would most accurately be able to say, like, was he a good friend or not, are going to get up and speak. And you see this all in the program, right? And you're like, dang, this is a long program. I have to watch this whole thing? You're like, yeah, you have to watch the whole thing. That's just the rule before you go enter through the pearly gates. And then the last one is someone in your church and community service. And that's maybe a bishop that you had, or a pastor or priest, or maybe someone that you were supposed to be serving in a capacity in your service that was below you in that congregation or something along those lines. Or maybe someone that had nothing to do with you but would have benefited from your voluntary service in your church or community. They're going to get up and speak. Okay. So you're sitting in this room, you see the program, and you're like, why is the funeral not starting yet? And as you're thinking, like, hey, you go to turn to the angel and say, why isn't the funeral starting? And you catch out of the corner of your eye on the image of the screen that is recording or looking at the funeral, you see everyone passing around this cup with some liquid in it. And it's weird because you're like, no, they wouldn't be drinking at my funeral, probably, at least not yet, maybe, I don't know. So like, what is that? You're like, that's odd. Is this why it's taking so long that they're drinking out of this cup? And it looks like everyone has to take it, and especially the people who are about to say something about you. And so you turn to the angel and you say, hey, what's this thing that they're drinking? And the angel goes, hey, so what that is it's a truth serum. And you're like, a what serum? A truth serum. So what we do is we make everyone in your funeral take this shot of a truth serum, and they're forced to tell the truth about how they felt about you. And not only how they felt about you, but what you meant to them in your life. They're forced to tell the truth. And now your heart just starts racing, right? It's like, and not only that, your heart not only is racing, but it just sinks down into your stomach, and you're like, oh no. And you start thinking about all the people that are on that program about to speak and what they would actually say about you. So this is the part that you want to write down, because this is where you get an understanding of, based off of what actually matters, where are you at? And so your mom gets up first, and your mom starts talking about you, how she actually feels about what kind of a son or daughter you were, and how she actually feels about where you were spending your time and efforts and energy, and whether you were forgotten about them or whether you're a really good person to them, right? And your dad, the same thing. Your grandpa gets up and talks about how he thought you were forgotten, or he was forgotten by you, or an aunt or uncle that said, like, yeah, I could tell that Hayden only really cared about me when he needed something from me, or something along like those lines, right? And then your boss gets up and is talking about you, your contribution and what type of person you were, not on how much money you made the company, because I highly doubt they'd be talking about that in their funeral, right? Not about like how much money you made in your life, but about what type of person were you in contributing to the good that the organization was trying to do, or the good of the people around you. What did you meaningfully contribute selflessly to the others around you? Same thing with the person that gets up and talks about your service in your church and community. But this is why this gets so powerful to me, is because if you make this situation out to where the people that matter most in your life, what would they say about you if they had to take a truth serum right now? What would they say? And if you can play that scenario out and be really honest with yourself about what they would say, that sets the stage for where you are. Then what's left is to own those outcomes and say, I am who I am for the people I care about most because of the choices that I've made. Because I highly doubt that when you get to that minute, if this scenario was real, right, and you were at the funeral, you were watching your own funeral, that those people would be, that they, even if you had some bad circumstance happen to you, that, like, if the people were really telling the truth about you, that doesn't quite matter as much as your efforts and abilities to overcome those circumstances, if that makes sense. But doing the funeral exercise or the eulogy exercise this way really sets the stage for the next version of it that I really like. So I always do that first one, at least what I've been doing lately, as my understanding of this has evolved, is that I've been really encouraging people to, when you're going and setting goals, first off start with, if I were to die today, and before I went into the pearly gates or passed through the pearly gates, an angel took me aside and said, you have to go watch your funeral. And then you realize that everyone had to take a truth serum before they talked about you. What would they say about you right now, honestly? And the pit in your stomach of like, ooh, I don't want to write down what they would say because I'm afraid that it's actually true, that's probably the truth. But anyway, that sets the backdrop for the next part of this exercise, which is imagine that you were going to die in 5 years. Or like Covey says 3 years. I actually hadn't caught up until this reading that he says 3 years from today. For some reason, I'd missed that. But imagine you're going to die in 3 years, and it's the same situation. And you get to choose now what you want everyone to say about you. Go write out all of those important people in your life. What would you want them to say about you in 5 years from now? But imagine you can't change anything about what you are going to do in those 5 years in terms of the big things. Like, you can't change what your career is. You can't change if you were going to school or not. You can't just go drop out and then do whatever unless you were already planning on doing that. Everything has to go according to plan. All you can change is how you behave within those things over the next 5 years. And imagine what you want people to say in a funeral if you were to die 5 years from now. That is where it gets really powerful, because now you have scripted for yourself the things that matter most. And if you can do that, and so you can do that 5 years out. I do that especially like when I'm really trying to dial in on my goals. What I'll say is, okay, first off, let's start from like the end of my life. Let's say I live to 150 years old or 100 years old. 100, I'm going to live to 150 years old. I really hope. So let's say that that's the case. Then I want to set up the funeral situation for myself there, because that includes everyone. Like, that includes grandchildren, that includes great-grandchildren, that includes contribution across a long period of time. And it gives me enough time to change to become that type of person, right? And then I dial it down and I say, okay, now for my short-term vision. So that's my mission in life. Is what I'm going to gain by doing that exercise is going to give me my mission in life. As I dial it back to 5 years, I call that like your 5-year vision. 3 to 5 years is typically like the best way to do it. And there's a lot of people that talk about this, but they don't talk about it in context of the mission, of your most important contribution in life. So then I do the funeral exercise 5 years out. And this is after I've already done the one that helps me understand where I am, right? I do that funeral exercise 5 years out, and I say, I can't change anything about the trajectory of my life, but I can change how I behave within it. What do I want my contribution to them to be in the next 5 years? And then I do it one step closer. I do it at a year out. So my year from now, if I were to die a year from now, what would I want to just go all out doing, and how would I do it? What would be like my last hurrah, and how would I do it? And I don't mean to get like really morbid with this. It just really, this is something about this eulogy assessment really just helps you drive home the things that matter most. And that's why I do it this way. And I've found tremendous meaning in the audacious goals that I've set for myself. If you were to look for as an outsider in and say, like, what has Hayden accomplished in his life so far, it'd probably be much more than most people in their late 20s. But the reason why I get so excited about doing it this way is because when I try to set and achieve goals in the context of my mission and my unique contribution and my identity, I don't fabricate that identity for myself. I discover it as I do these really, Covey calls these right brain exercises, or these things that really help us get home to center. As I do that, it not only helps me achieve a higher quality of goal, or higher quantity of the output that I'm seeking, let's say in sales, or higher quality of the output that I'm seeking in my marriage or in the contribution in my church and community, but it just gets me really excited about the next version of me every step of the way, because it starts to create this like constitution, this way that you live your life, so that you're not fragmented across multiple areas of your life, but you're the same person in all of them with the same mission. And that gives a lot of context and meaning, and it's really powerful. I'm going to kind of leave it there because I'm going to touch base on this a little bit more tomorrow, but that's the exercise that I really enjoy doing. And this is what I would say is like the first step really in being able to identify what things are what are the deepest values within you that are based off of true principles, and who do you want to be for the people you care about most. Because later we're going to talk about mission statements, and all that stuff can seem really boring and esoteric unless you think about it as you don't have time to not focus on this, because it's like trying to argue that you don't have time to get gas. I heard Covey say this in a talk I was listening to him give, where he said, this is me listening on YouTube, not in person, but he said, if you can spend 20 minutes a day connecting to your center, then you will live a life that is based on that center. And he goes, you might argue with yourself that you don't have time. But the truth is, it would be like making an argument that you don't have time to get gas if you're on empty. You don't have time not to. If in fact these things are what matter most, and they are. And that's undeniable, right? So anyway, thanks for following along with this part of my study today. This one has been good for me because I've been trying to flesh out these ideas myself as well and try to understand the best way to apply them with the people that I work with and the people that I care most about in my life. And that's my challenge would be that you go try to do this funeral exercise, because that's the one thing that I'm going to be doing over the next little while. And I just appreciate you guys for following along and hope you guys have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.